Coffee Break with K.A. and Dana. We're brought to you by the Lesbian Talk Show. I'm K.A., a lesbian romance author, and in my past life, a counselor and a social worker.
And I'm Dana, an avid reader, coffee connoisseur, recovering alcoholic, and a graduate of the School of Hard Knocks.
Grab a cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and join us for a meaningful conversation from a lesbian perspective. Roughly half of lesbians surveyed in a recent study reported no religious affiliation. Does this lack of connection to organized religion mean that lesbians aren't spiritual, or is it a reflection of how many have been treated by their churches, synagogues, mosques, etc.? In this episode, K.A. and Dana will discuss the topic of religion and spirituality in the lesbian community. Won't you join us for a meaningful conversation? So, I initially thought that this episode should begin with definitions of religion and spirituality, mainly because many see these terms as the same or similar. It was a dry start, but I wanted to be sure that we all had the same understanding. And, had the episode played out as planned, you'd be listening to me read them to you right now. But, as is often the case, my wife had a better idea. She sent me back to the drawing board.
Well, I actually found a really good definition of religion and spirituality.
Well, I'm going to let you go with it, because I'll tell you, Webster's Dictionary left me thinking, well, that's about as clear as mud. So go for it. What did you find?
I have religion is believing in someone else's experiences, where spirituality is having your own experiences.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Religion is more about the particular teachings, and spirituality is more about reflection and making faith your own.
I believe, well, it's like I saw a meme the other day on Facebook, and it said, religion is going to church on Sunday thinking about fishing, and spirituality is in your boat on Sunday thinking about God. And I think that the one thing that the spiritual rule that I think everyone should follow is the golden rule. Be nice to others. I don't think it's as hard as some people make it out to be.
Okay, so I actually can kind of buy that, although if you don't do boats and fishing, I think you can have a spiritual moment or two sitting in church.
I absolutely agree with you. There's as I've said before, there's lots of ways up the mountain. You know, having a religious program or set of values is good. I have no problem with people who are religious and who follow their religion. What I have a problem with is when they try and make me believe that their way is the only way up the mountain.
And that is what happens whenever people have an organization that they want to grow. You have to grow it somehow, and the way you grow it is to try to convince others to join you. And I agree with you. That turns me off as well.
You know, for me, and I'm just going to throw this out there, I think I'm a cafeteria Christian. I take a little bit of different religions, and that's what I follow. I follow the edict that's what I believe in. And I believe that there's something out there bigger than I am, because, if it was up to me, the sun had probably come up about 10:30 or 11 since I've retired. So I know there's something out there that's bigger than me. What I don't believe is that if you follow a certain religion to the pinpoint, that it makes you a better person than someone who follows their own set of spiritual rules.
Well, you and I totally agree on that, and I thought we might weigh in a little differently here. So I totally agree with that. But what I would add to that is there are some religions that need you to follow to a T, and there are other religions that don't. There are other religions that are a little more open and leave it to the individual's interpretation of, scripture or whatever. I don't want to just tie this to Christianity because, that's my faith. So whatever it is that religion is based on, there are some that need it to be by the book more than others.
But there's those out there that only follow certain parts of the book. And I'm going to throw this out there, and this may be our big difference, I don't know. I believe the Bible was written by a man, for a man, about a man. And that there's things in there that maybe maybe that don't belong in there, or that maybe are misconstrued by our language that we use in today's society. A lot of things come back to language and how they're interpreted.
Yeah, so we're a little bit different there. I believe the Bible was written by men about a man who was a man at that time, but was more than that. Because that's what Christianity is all about, is that we believe that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, that whole thing. Okay, but here's where we totally agree with what you said. I think that the Bible was written during a period in history, a certain time and place, and that what's written in it has a lot to do with what was going on then. And you have to be careful when you apply it literally to what, to your life now or to what's going on now, because, I think there were scriptures that could definitely be misconstrued if they were applied to today's times. One set of scriptures, and really there aren't too many, that deal with homosexuality, but that set of scriptures is one of them, and I think that by following those so literally without taking into consideration the context of the time they were written has really hurt a lot of people and turned a lot of gay and lesbians away from the church. I don't know. That's just my take. I rambled a little bit there, but it's my take.
And I fully agree with that the gays and lesbians, and while it's changing today, and we're accepted more and more worship places, I don't believe that we're having as much problem finding them. What we're having a problem with is all of the others telling us that we're wrong, and using scripture to defend that. I went to Catholic school, and, by about incorrigible was always on my report card, but, from probably the age of 9 or 10, I was told I was going to hell because obvious signs of homosexuality were coming out. Well, that, and I was a little bit crazy, but I think a lot of people use the Bible to judge others while not looking at their own behavior. I know some people who proclaim to be Christians that are the most negative, horrible people I've ever met.
And the flip side of that is, I know some people who are wonderful, caring people who help others and care about what's going on in all the corners of the world, who don't step a foot in a church or a synagogue or, whatever.
It's not, and today's, like I said, today's very different than, even when we were younger. We didn't have as many choices if we wanted to have a relationship with a higher power. The word spirituality hasn't been around, wasn't around when I was, younger and looking for something greater than myself. And, my relationship with the higher power today is much different than the Catholic one that I grew up with. I had a really tough time, coming to a relationship with a higher power. And I didn't find my relationship in a religion. Now, we've gone to church and, it's been a good experience, in all honesty. I just don't believe you find your God on Sundays and then go out and be a horrible person during the week.
Oh, we totally agree there. And I think I really think we're very much on the same page with this. And I think some of the difference that we're teasing out has to do with how we were raised. You were raised Catholic. Historically, that's not been a religion that's been very accepting of those who find that they're gay or lesbian. I grew up in the United Church of Christ and have continued throughout my lifetime in the United Church of Christ, with a brief period in the Presbyterian Church. And the United Church of Christ is a more liberal denomination. I mean, one of the first to come on board and do same-sex marriages. We fly the rainbow flags at many of our churches. So I grew up in a church that was accepting of me, never said I was going to hell.
But there again, it's one set of rules, one set of edicts or theories, or that I don't want to say expected to follow, but that you follow to the best of your ability. Where for me, I go in and pick a little bit out of this that I like and a little bit out of that, and I've worked it into a spiritual program that works for me. We've talked about this before, about me being in recovery, and I had to find a God or a higher power or something of my own understanding. And I had a really hard time with the male God when I first got sober. Strictly because with my background, not only in the Catholic Church, but just my childhood, I didn't see men in a very positive light, so I had a really hard time with the male God. And it took me a long time to come up with a spiritual program that I felt was true to my heart. And I think for me, by picking different parts out of different religions and different practices, I feel like I've come up with a really good program. I don't, as we've talked about, my spiritual program is really, really good when things are going great. But when the shit hits the fan is when I really have to work at having a relationship with my higher power.
I think that's true, whether you're centered as a member of a church or whatever, or whether you do it your way. The idea is to connect with that higher power, God. And I think there are times when we all struggle. When times are hard, I think the struggle's kind of natural. But see, my take on that comes from my more liberal denomination. If I was in a more strict denomination, I probably would tell you, if you just come over and try us at our church, would show you the way to do it. But I'm not saying that. What I'd say is, whoever you are, whatever you do, whatever your walk of life, if you walked into mine, you'd be welcome. But I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back real quick to that, to your reference to God as a male, the he. Some of that is that language of the time that we were talking about. Men ruled everything. So, of course, they'd use a masculine term to describe God. My goodness, it couldn't be a woman. And so the Bible's written in the language of that time. And literal interpretation forces us into thinking of God as only a male figure. But that's just literal interpretation, and that's just one example that kind of goes to that earlier point.
And I agree with that. Language is so important in today's society, and how we describe things and how we feel about things. We can change anything with language. We can change any meaning. But in talking about a male versus a female, I know you haven't seen it yet, but the movie The Shack, in the beginning, God is a black, not heavy, but, not thin woman. And I loved that part of it.
Okay, so we've had a great discussion, but I'm not sure that we really weighed in on whether or not the lesbian community is spiritual. So I thought we might just let our listeners decide. I posted a quiz on the website. How spiritual are you? So we've come to the end of an episode, and it's time to do what we'll do at the end of each episode: recommend a book and a movie. We're recommending my 5th novel, For a Moment